place right at Giri Raj's lotus feet. You get 1,000 times more hearing power.
And the last question is that the last verse we read about the animal, so it says that they're fearing in their mind that, so whether or not it was the case when they were doing the right sacrifice, like where we say that they will get the next life, the human form, when it was done the proper sacrifice. So this was apply to that kind of cases, like animals are fearing in that time also, the last verse that we read.
Well, it's a little bit enigmatic, because in so many cases we hear about the sacrifice of animals from the Vedic, even from the Vedic perspective, as being somewhat tinged with sinful activities. On the other hand, we hear so many times about how it's simply a test to see if the mantras work and that the animal gets new life. I haven't read anything specific, so I don't want to comment past that, except for it's a little bit of an amorphous area, and I've read other discussions on this about sacrifice of animals. But the way Prabhupada presents it is that in previous ages, when people really knew what they were doing, then there was really no harm to the animal. And in other contexts, he says that, it's a sinful activity. So one would have to draw one's own conclusion from that. I mean, if you do get a new life, who likes to have their head chopped off?
I have a question about the verse in previous chapter where it says that how by satisfying Krishna we satisfy everybody in the universe. So could you give a practical example of that? Say if somebody is worshipping Krishna in their home, how somebody is sitting in other part of the universe, in what way do they get benefited from that in a practical way?
Well, first of all, look at it from the other point of view, that if somebody isn't worshipping Krishna, what good can they do for anyone, including themselves? People think I'm the friend, but actually Krishna says, Suridam Sarvabhutanam, I'm the friend. I help all living entities. He's the only one who actually can help all living entities. And so many people, big philanthropists, as was pointed out here, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was very fond of pointing out, philanthropist means animal killer. Because for the sake of feeding so many people, they kill animals, and then they feed people the animals, which means poor animals. And it is a fact that people, although they may be well-meaning, their philanthropy is misplaced. They don't know how to help other people. So one fact is, if somebody's worshiping Krishna, they get the intelligence and the wherewithal to actually help other people, which means to bring them closer to Krishna and to be able to help them. So somebody who's a staunch worshiper of the deity will be full of knowledge, full of compassion, without envy, and all these qualities will arise within such a person. And then they can help the whole world, like Prabhupada did, giving access to unlimited transcendental knowledge, a shelter in times of distress and catastrophe, and so many things. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Oroville, California.
God, when will that stop? Maybe it will be wiped off the earth and then I won't. Yeah, to your point, how it is that someone who's worshiping here can help someone in another planet. Well, it's very simple. Krishna's in
That was his question?
Oh, what was the point that he was making?
It was?
The point he was making.
Are you talking about the Shraddha ceremony?
No, like as devotees we understand that how worshipping Krishna we help everybody, but somebody may question that, hey, you are sitting and worshipping here, how are you helping a poor person in India or poor person in some other part of the world? You will never get in touch with them. So how are you practically helping that person whom you will probably never come in touch in your life? So I guess just some practical explanation of that.
Well, when Prahlad Maharaj was making the prayer to Lord Nrsingadev, and then Lord Nrsingadev said, not only will your father be benefited, but 21 generations before him and after him will be benefited. So the fact is that Krishna is in the heart of every living being, and he knows everything. He knows who's been connected with whom. He knows everything. So
Well, I just add to that when such a question comes up, it's important. When such a question comes up, it's important to ask what you mean by helping somebody else. Because it's just like if someone says, "Can you show me God? Can you prove there's God?" Then you have to ask. Well, you don't have to, but it's recommended that you define what they consider valid evidence to produce that they will accept. What kind of evidence will you accept that there's God? If you want me to show him to you, let's establish that first. So you say, help somebody, in some other place in India. What do you mean by help them? How, going down that road and asking, what kind of help could you offer? You send them a box of crackers or something like that, and how do you propose to help somebody actually? What does that mean?
Another point that struck me during the reading was that in analyzing who was worshipable, more or less, the person who makes other Vaishnava, the Vaishnava who makes other Vaishnavas, is the most worshipable. So we should try to make other people Vaishnavas.
Yep.
I was appreciating how Srila Prabhupada focused on this point of deity worship and preaching, and how deity worship is important, but preaching is far more important. And he said it again and again. He said that if one worships the deity but doesn't know how to respect preachers, they'll remain on the lowest platform. And other statements like that really stood out to me. And so I was thinking in terms of our movement that taking the totality of Srila Prabhupada's statements, as much as someone like me can, it seems like preaching is very, very much the forefront of his consciousness and his desires for us. And what then does that mean for, for example, a movement in which in many places, unfortunately, the deity worship which was established at a certain standard is maintained only with great difficulty, often at the expense of the Sankirtan movement. How do we, not that we can necessarily solve the problems of the world right now in this room in a couple of minutes, but is there anything to be said about that? Balancing these two aspects of these two margs, and what it means when, sometimes...
Well, Prabhupada did say that if you don't continue hearing and chanting properly, that after I leave, you will say, "What great burden did he put around my neck? You hung a stone around my neck, great burden." And we have to emphasize first and foremost hearing and chanting. When that's going on properly, then there's the natural enthusiasm to worship the deity. And also, every yogi has some kind of burden to carry. If you're a bhajananandi, you have to recluse yourself to some place and live without association very much, and you have to perform some austerities. If you're a Goshtiyanandi, you have to maintain the deity and at the same time preach. Both things have to go on. The Panchatrick Vidhi has to go on, and the preaching has to go on at the same time. And our great burden is to figure out how to do that. And in the process of taking that burden, we become enlightened. We have to take responsibility for the movement, and we can't just say, well, let's just relax all the the rules and take it down to bare bones, because Prabhupada just didn't understand. No, he understood that it's necessary for us to worship the deity at a high standard, first of all because it pleases Krishna, and second of all because of what it makes of us to do it, to be able to stay in a pure condition. So both of them have to go on at a very high standard, and the means to do that has to be discussed amongst those in the community to see, okay, well, it's a great burden now. How could you reduce the burden on the few devotees that are doing it? One way would be for more training, for instance. If more people are trained in how to do it, and also, for instance, more Brahmins are created from the body of devotees that can also, help in the deity worship. Many hands make light. How does it go? Make light work. Like that. Yes, Prabhu? Bhakta Matt? Go ahead, because you haven't got in yet, and we'll pass it to Gopal.
On this, I hear the argument all the time made by Prabhupada about Jesus saying, "Thou shalt not kill." And specifically in that example where Jesus went into the temple and threw them out, he was more concerned with them turning the temple into a den of thieves than he was about killing animals. Because even for me last year, when I was reading the Bible and trying to garner like spiritual knowledge, in Leviticus, the priests would dress in all white robes and they would slaughter the animals and they would pour the blood on the robes. And it's mentioned throughout the Bible many times that it's now okay to eat certain animals. And so in response, almost like what Gopal was saying the other day about killing animals, I think that when you make that argument with a Christian, they go, well, it's in the Bible, I can eat an animal. It's there. It's no big deal. So I've found that whenever I talk to Christians about recently about this, I have to go from the health aspect of it, because if the health aspect challenges their belief system, then they have to put their entire belief system into question as well, if that makes sense. So the "thou shalt not kill" thing just doesn't seem to work on Christians so much, because they're it's all throughout the Bible. And that was one of the reasons why I stopped reading the Bible. I got to that point in the Bible and I was like, I can't read this. Like, this is not, I don't know what this God is all about, but I can't handle this. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, just one thought is that, when Prabhupada when he makes such arguments, I don't think he's trying to be completely precise in, going into the Christian theology, which, he didn't study minutely, but he is trying to call them out on certain principles, even if he's not applying it in a way that is accepted by mainstream Christianity. It's his way of getting some grip, and it's like he pushes on that point again and again. Yeah, but what about this principle? And even though it may not accurately address the way that the Christians see it, it does give a jumping off point for the whole discussion about the culture of violence to animals and how it relates to spirituality.
Yeah, and when Prabhupada was talking with Cardinal Danilou, who was one of the top cardinals in Europe at the time, very highly respected, and he stayed on this point. And the reason he stayed on the point was because it brought out the fact that how they justified is that the animal has no soul. That takes them right into the philosophy of life and why they're cruel and heartless and all the things that Jesus taught. It's embodied in that, concept. If you're going to treat, living beings like that, God's the Father of all living beings, and they just all he could do was squirm, and it was very effective.
Prabhupada also pointed out in one morning walk that if you're going to eat animals, if you have to eat animals, wait till they die naturally, especially cows he was talking about. And so, he would concede, okay, you want to eat meat, then wait till they die naturally. And it was in that same vein, why commit the violence to the animal? Gopal?
Really appreciated 7:15:8. person who wants to advance in superior religion and are advised to give up all envy of other living entities, whether in relation to the body, words, or mind. There is no religion superior to this.
Yeah, and what's the number there? 7:15?
8.
8. And just... Yeah.
Wanted to add to that, it's interesting, the Sanskrit word for envy. For word, Prabhupada says here, it's dandasya, causing trouble because of envy. So it's envy, but doing something out of envy and making others suffer.
Yeah, it's also coming right after the verse where it's criticizing those who are killing in the name of sacrifice. That's a kind of envy, malice towards other living entities, killing them for the sake of, religious advancement. Any other thing? Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to also appreciate the same verse, that it's, especially in the world today where people have so much discomfort towards religion for different reasons, whether it's in India or even in the West, this kind of really sets it apart that, superior religion, which means giving up envy towards all living entities. And I was just thinking how Sankirtan really fits right in there, that if we don't engage in Sankirtan, then we're really not practicing that.
As a continuation of that thought, when Prabhupada talks about violence in the Bhagavad Gita and elsewhere, his definition is a little more proactive than most people's. His definition of violence includes stopping the preaching of Krishna consciousness, or not giving people the opportunity to take to Krishna consciousness. That's violence. In other words, you actually have to be active in giving out the mercy in order to be considered non-violent. You can't just say, well, I don't hurt anybody. It doesn't work in Prabhupada's world or in the world of the Bhagavatam. You actually have to be compassionate and go out of your way to save people from the slaughtering process of the material world by giving them knowledge. Otherwise you are violent. I used to tell people for a while, when I was in the San Francisco airport and I had a booth, and then I'd show them the book and then I'd ask for a donation. And I would say that we're doing this to help people all over the world who are suffering from a serious ailment called avidya, which means ignorance. I just say it as like a fact, like we're helping people who are suffering from this really heavy ailment. And I'd say it's called avidya, or ignorance. And then I go on talking, and so we ask everybody to give a donation. They go, oh yeah, that sounds pretty serious,
There are a few registered cases in USA already.
There are a few registered cases. It's reached epic proportions, especially in certain parts of the country. Epidemic proportions, I mean.
I was appreciating text 5 of the 15th chapter, because it was saying how if one does find the proper time, place, then with love offering this delectable prasad cooked in ghee to the deity, and then to some respected Vaishnava or Brahmana. And I guess I like that verse because the other day I tried some of the ghee that Gopal Champu Prabhu had, and I was really amazed. I was really shocked how good it was. And so good. And it just got me thinking when I read the verse that, it's really a nice way to, prasadam and serving it, and just all goes into those kind of menial tasks. It's all meant to please someone, and how the whole conception that, Prabhupada said, it's devotional service. Bhakti means service, and so to develop some skill level which enhances another person's one's, pleasurable experience is kind of what it's all about.
Nice.
Word to add. It's interesting in the verse. In the verse it says Muni Anna. There is no word ghee. It's just the food for sages. And Prabhupada says food cooked in ghee for saintly persons.
What's it called?
It's the standard. Muni Anna.
Muniana. That's a nice name too. Muniana Das. Food for sages. That could be a good restaurant name too. Muniana. Food for sages. Unaccepted, eh? Okay.
We would like to...
Oh, here you go.
Even though Bhaktimat...
That doesn't sound very loud to me. I don't know. Whenever Maharaj gets it, it's just like... It's not off? Let's hear. Try it again. Please.
Let's try it again. Even though when I first met Mahdi, had no idea what he was doing, but right from the get-go, as soon as he got a brahmachari book in his hands and he started reading and he said, "Hey, can I be a brahmachari?" I mean, it was
You want
right.
to talk into the mic.
It was spontaneous. It was spontaneous.
Go ahead, Maharaj. This is good. Please don't stop. Well, we couldn't hear you at all. You're unaware.
I doubt that. So ever since then, I've been kind of going back and forth, because this is a little bit soon, in a sense, to do this, He's not been around very long, and he's certainly not initiated yet. But he's serious. I happen to know him very well, and I'm willing to take this risk. Yeah. So we're going to give him saffron.
It's not sannyas. Don't freak out.
As an encouragement, I think we should we were talking about making devotees, and making devotees means you don't make it harder and harder and harder and harder and harder, and pretty soon there aren't any brahmacharis, there aren't any full-time devotees, and there aren't any ashrams, and it becomes something else. We just heard about the varnashram system, and there's 4 ashrams in the varnashram system. The varnashram system isn't just the grahastha ashram, it's the things that we read made abundantly clear. So we'd like to present this cloth to you.
Let me say a few words too.
Oh, absolutely.
Just that I've known His Holiness Kesava Bharati Maharaj since 1973, and I know him to be a touchstone because of who he is. I don't know if I know any other devotee as well as Kesava Bharati Maharaj, but I do know one thing: he has a completely pure heart. One of the evidence of that is that he was best friends with Jayananda Prabhu, who is certifiably a pure devotee. And like attracts like. They lived in the same house. They were best friends. And Jayananda Prabhu and Kesava Bharati Maharaj were as close as any two devotees could be. There are many other evidences, but Maharaj has also lived up to what Bhaktivinoda Thakur has said in the purports we just read. A person who makes other devotees, who has that influence on others, is actually a Vaishnava. And the ones who make more and more devotees are considered the most elevated of Vaishnavas. So I've seen Kesava Bharati Maharaj sit in one place and just talk to devotees, talk to prospective devotees, and then they're convinced. And so that's one part. And the other part is that Maharaj has dedicated his life to the instruction that Prabhupada gave both of us in 1974 in San Francisco, which was very direct. And he told the two of us while we were sitting right in front of him that you must also read my books. And when Maharaj took this completely to heart, I mean, he's always done it, but to heart as his main service in life, it has a certain kind of potency that's now starting to take effect, in the hearts of devotees like you, Matt, and other devotees wherever Maharaj goes and does this, and online and so forth. And is also, picking up steam as a movement in North America, where we have a whole committee who are developing this concept of increasing the reading of Prabhupada's books in groups all over North America as a panacea. So, on all these accounts, this is representative. I know it's very important to Maharaj, because Bhakta Matt, ever since he came, I've been hearing about you from Maharaj, and the other thing is that whatever happens in this room here in Govardhan during Kartik has a special effect. I've seen it. I mean, I've been living in this room for the last maybe 17 years. We've had this hearing and chanting going on since then. Maybe I've been in this room 15 years. The first 2 years we were on the roof. But when there's a vow made or blessing given or an idea that's germinated here in this room during Kartik, I always see that it's the arrangement of Giriraj himself, and that there's something very special in it. So the way that you described how you came here, because the energy carried you along, that's the internal potency, and obviously culminating here, or continuing here, is the mercy of Krishna manifest in his most merciful form of Govardhan Hill. So, okay. Therefore, on this day, which is November 14th, 2018, Thursday, his Jupiter. It's the Sandhya. On behalf of His Holiness Kesava Bharati Das Goswami Maharaj, I'm happy to participate in passing on this saffron cloth to you with the best wishes and prayers that you may be successful in your devotional life, starting with the Brahmachari ashram. All those who agree with this, please say Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
One more thing. And this comes with some expectations. We know who you are. We know that you have a potential to lead, and especially to manage. And we know that you were a salesman, very successful salesman, and you were a recruiter of salesmen. In case you didn't know, he used to go out on university campuses and recruit men onto his team. And he built up a team so that he was a regional director of a company in America. So there's a great need for this, as we just read, distribution of the literature. So this is the expectation, and I know for a fact, I say this in front of Giriraj, in front of my best friend, who's one of the most empowered preachers on the planet, and in front of all of these wonderful Vaishnavas who come year after year, you're going to do this, and I'm going to help you, and we're going to revolutionize book distribution from the full-time devotee aspect in North America, beginning with Houston. Hare Krishna.
Haribol! Anything?
A little bit of, that was a lot. It was really exciting. I mean, I feel like I felt a year ago that I had wasted so much time trying to figure out where I was supposed to be. And I feel like Krishna's made up for so much lost time.
Stand back here.
has made up for so much wasted and lost time in the past 4 months. It's been incredible, the journey, and I'm just very honored to be amongst this group of people and here in front of Vaisesika Prabhu and Kesava Bharati Maharaj. It's unbelievable. So thank you both. I really, really appreciate it. And I will not let you down. Hare Krishna.
Gaur Premanande Haribo! And that brings us to the cow break. We'll be back here at 5:33. Hare Krishna.